also should be talked about. So before we get into this, Ikemesit,
Yes, Omatseye, good morning. I can hear you.
okay, good. So I just like us to quickly get this off the way. African, there's what we have now. Let's get into the African Country Instability Risk Index from your firm, SBM Intelligence. I have to get you what your thoughts would be on Nigeria's spending priorities. Is that to related security? Let's go.
Okay, sure. So, with Akiri, what we basically wanted to do was we wanted to give business decision makers and investors a tool to understand risk across the continent, right? With all of the military coups and the violent and regime takeovers that have been all the rage over the past 3 to 4 years, right? We thought there was a gap, right, in the market for clearly understanding at a top line level which African countries are doing well from sort of a governance and an economic standpoint, and which ones are sort of laggards, right? So what we did was we measured 47 sub-Saharan African countries across four broad categories, right? So leadership and governance, is their how well is their political system doing? Right? Are they a democracy? Are they an autocracy? Or are they a country that conducts elections, but their leaders are a bit more authoritarian? We obviously measure the economy, right? I mean, this is Business Express, so we're talking about the economy, and
Yes.
a stable, predictable currency, and an economy that is seeing positive growth. Oftentimes is a harbinger of political stability, right? And obviously, the converse is the case that unstable rather, and troubled economic prospects obviously leaves people a bit more restive, and that could lead to a heightened level of instability. We also measured history, so have coups or violent military takeovers, or have adverse economic circumstances like currency devaluations, currency redenominations, excessive inflation, in some cases hyperinflation, taking place in a country, because oftentimes that's a useful indicator for understanding, right, the likelihood of this sort of developments reoccurring, right? The thing about repeating history and whether that makes you insane or foolish or otherwise.
Mm.
And then the final bit was geopolitics, right? In a very active geopolitical environment, witness what the worsening US-China relationship is doing to the global economy, the conflict in the Middle East, the conflict in Eastern Europe. So, how tied is an African country to a global power's geopolitical priorities, or similarly, how decoupled are they, right, from then? That's also a very useful indicator for understanding how economic decision making will happen. So that's what we tried to do with Akiri, and
Yes, thanks.
put it.
That's what you try to do. That's you delve into the report already, but bringing it back home to Nigeria and looking at the spending priority of the country right now, and then linking that up to the supplementary budget of 2.1 trillion naira submitted by the administration already, it's making the rounds, and all for the wrong reason. What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, okay, so really with Nigeria spending priorities, right? We ranked, first and foremost, we ranked Nigeria as stable. So, in our assessment, Nigeria is not a significant risk of, sort of any regime change, right? Or any coups happening anytime soon. But we said there are important risk items, and almost all of the risk items pertaining to Nigeria economic. So you
Mm.
witness the debt situation, the revenue, the revenue gap situation, the fact that, so not many Nigerians pay tax, right? And the Nigerians who do pay tax, tend to be overtaxed. So some of those priorities are sort of, are things that, we have said to watch out. And with the
Mm.
new, and with the new spending decision that's currently making its way right through the National Assembly, it seems as sort of an exacerbation of those risk items that we've said to look out for. Some of the most important and some of the most difficult decisions that Nigerian policymakers will need to make over the next 5 to 10 years, over the next two democratic terms, right, will largely be economic. So they will dovetail around economic reform. And with some of the spending items, the yacht, for example, the presidential yacht, for
Hmm.
example, right? Borrowing for social spending and some of those things, right? It sort of indicates that Nigerian policymakers are still not majoring on the major things, but are still
Mm,
majoring on the minor things. And those things are important, right? For investors to know, right? And to understand, right? So until fundamental economic reform priorities are put on the table, right? And they
yeah.
become front and center, there's really nothing to indicate that these current administrations, at least on the face of it, right? We've been at this since what now? The beginning of July. There's really nothing to indicate right now that the governing priorities of this administration is any different from the last one. And that's something that
Mm.
investors also know.
But in terms of perception of how people see the leadership by virtue of the society where we live, would this spending priorities get to make the followers see their leaders as well? This looks like a representation of where we aspire to be in terms of getting the yard, the cars. Now, even the lawmakers are expecting their SUV soon. So at least in terms of our image, is that good for optics?
Obasha, is your question that are we doing aspire to perspire, right, in governance? Because that's what it sounds. That's what it sounds like.
Yes.
So I think for most Nigerians, right, the priority is, social services, right? Get health, get education, get infrastructure, right? Up and running, right? Invest in skills acquisitions, right? And development. Deal with the yawning infrastructure gaps, right? Around providing electricity, providing road, rail, right? Water, infrastructure. Just make life easy for people to go out and, create wealth and build value. I don't think that, aspirational big ticket items is a sustainable way to build a 21st century economy, right? And considering the fact that, and lest people think that the situation Nigeria is in is normal, a situation where at the same time you've got high inflation,
Mm,
high unemployment, and low economic growth, which is called hyperinflation, is sort of the trifecta of the economist's worst nightmare. Not many economies have to deal with that. If you look at the roster of economies, you think Venezuela, you think Argentina, right? You think Zimbabwe, they're currently dealing with that right now globally. They are not that many. So it appears as though we've sort of normalized this situation because we're always focused on sort of the inflation and the
mm,
economic growth numbers, and a lot less so on how unemployment distorts priorities within the economy. This is an unusual situation for an economy to be in, to have those three things
mm.
basically trending in the wrong direction. So dealing with that has to be the urgent priority. And
Okay.
there's very little that's coming out from the administration. I mean, there have been some positive noises around tax reform, for example, right? But apart from that, and apart from the fact that multilateral institutions are still willing to extend Nigeria lines of credit, there's very little that's coming out of Aso Rock and sort of out of the important policy-making institutions that gives room for comfort. And that has to change soon because the world's largest will not continue indefinitely.
Okay, so final one. If you do this one for us in just less than a minute, it will be fine for business. So, how does corruption factor in this your risk assessment instability in on the continent?
Oh, it's a big part, right? So under leadership and governance, we have a sub indicator, right, that has to do with the ethnic dominance, right, of a particular group in the national economy. We also have, measures that indicate, for example, the length of, power of any individual, or say an individual's family or families that are associated, right, in individuals. We have sub indicators that sort of act as proxies and measures, right, of corruption. And this is important and critical because again, what corruption really, really does, apart from it being morally abhorrent, is that it distorts the allocation of economic resources, right? It concentrates economic resources in a lot fewer hands than would have been if ordinary ration and logic, right, took place. So corruption is a very critical part, right, of our index, and corruption, obviously, are dealing with corruption is should be a critical aspect of any African policymaker's toolbox.
All right, that's how we can wrap it up this morning. But before we go, the clients are listening, so I think I see a message dropped in here for you already. just a comment relating to this. And so in reaction to this, it says, in view of the coup and other issues sweeping across the continent, the tool is a welcome development for assessing risk and performance level. So that's more like a thumbs up for your study just released. So then it goes on to say, out of our spending priorities, we have budget for a particular yacht maintenance. And then it goes on, government asking people to tighten their belts, that they feel our pain, but are enjoying our sacrifice over frivolity. Hashtag what you said, aspire instead of getting to the people. So I see you said, so that style, linking it back in there. You can see how they do these things on the show. So let's get on one more message here now. I see this one. I'm trying to get Oluboroko. Yes, fine. Oluboroko sent in this one. Said, all we need in Nigeria is to improve the economy. It's simple. It's the economy, stupid. And then it goes on, just block the leakages and our economy will begin to look good. That's how we can take messages. So I want to say big thank you to Ikemesit, Effiong, partner at SBM Intelligence, for setting the agenda for business this morning. So in terms of this, your new report, where can people find it to get more details?
Sure. So it's on our website, sbmintel.com. You can check it out there. We've also put up links on all of our social channels, obviously LinkedIn, but also Twitter, Facebook, right? I'm not sure about Instagram, but Twitter and X. Oh, rather X and Facebook. Right. Yeah. So
we
you can
lost
find
the
it
audio there. We lost a bit of the audio when you were talking about where they can find it. So could you just go over that once again?
Oh, okay, sure. So sbmintel.com is our website. It's obviously there. You can also find it on our social media platforms. It's on LinkedIn, it's on X, and it's on Facebook as well. I'm not sure about Instagram, but I'm sure about those three.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Ikemesit, Effiong, it's always a pleasure having you around. You have yourself a great Thursday morning.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on my show.
Well done. Bye. Have a great day. And that's a wrap on Business Express this morning. Thanks to everyone who joined in this morning, and thanks to those who sent in messages. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa. Good morning.
Everyone, join me about talking about